afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for another Still Healthy. Let me introduce Dr. Katie Eastman here from Cigna. We are very lucky to have her. I got to chat with her for just a little bit before we started, and she is really a wonderful lady. She is a child therapist. I wanted to put that out there. I know it doesn't really align with this topic, but if you have any questions in regards to that, that does relate to the power of purpose, please make sure and put those questions in the chat. Any questions you have, place them in the chat and we will review those at the end of the presentation. So with that being said, Dr. Eastman, thank you so much for being here and I will hand it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Annabelle, and hello, everyone. Greetings from Anacortes, Washington, where the mountains meet the sea. This is a wonderful topic, and I know that a lot of people over this past year with COVID have wrestled with questions about what am I here for? What do I do next? What's next for me? And this has been a question that people have been looking for their purpose for years. And one of the things that I'd like you all to do is, as we go through this, take notes. And if anything sparks your interest or your thought that you want to talk to someone about further, I'm going to give you an 800 number, 1-877-622-4327. And that is your EAP 24/7 phone number. And that is for you and any member of your household. You also have 1 to 3 counseling sessions given to you free to you and any member of your household per issue. So if you just want to talk to somebody about your higher purpose or your next step or how you can make your life more meaningful, please reach out to that EAP. Your employer has given you that benefit for free because they want you to have a meaningful life. They want you to have the best life you can. So that's available to you. And with that, I'm going to start by saying that the reason we're talking about this is that the mystery of the meaning of life has stumped people for centuries, sparking theories from philosophers, spiritual and religious scholars, psychologists, and countless others, some of which date back to the earliest days of philosophical thought. Even Plato and Aristotle were wrestling with this very question. So please don't think by the end of this presentation you will understand your purpose. But what you will understand is the concept of purpose, which can mean many different things to different people. But what is fulfilling for me may not be the same for someone else. It may be rewarding for you, but not to someone else. We won't get all the answers about what your specific purpose might be during this time, but we will spend some time exploring the idea of what it means to you personally and how you might start on the path to living a more purposeful life. So we're going to talk about the definition of purpose. We're going to learn some about what the research says about the benefits of living with purpose. We're going to discover ways to identify and live differently with purpose. We're going to explore strategies for establishing purpose at work. And then we're going to go through all the way through. We'll be reviewing the benefits of how your employee assistance program can help you live this way. To really drill down into the power a sense of purpose can bring into our lives, we're going to first define what we even mean by the concept of purpose. On its surface, we might think we know exactly what it means, but I challenge you to put the idea into words. What words come to mind when you think about purpose? And I want you to just kind of think for a moment. How many of these words come to mind? We can see how broadly the idea of purpose can be defined. Is it something you require, acquire, a goal, a dream that is achieved? Is it an action, something you do? Maybe it's a feeling, an outcome, or something you've done or accomplished. Or is it a mindset, a personality trait that defines us. The official definition of the word is the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. It sounds quite simple, but purpose is an elusive concept for a lot of us. In fact, only about 25% of Americans feel strongly that they have a clear sense of purpose, while 40% either feel neutral or they disagree. What we will find as we progress through this seminar is that the reason that defines our purpose is unique to each one of us. It may include all, some, or none of the ideas described. Seeing how broadly purpose can be defined, you might wonder how something so nebulous can be so important. Why do we strive for it? It turns out that feeling purposeful plays a pretty important role in our physical, emotional, even professional well-being. The proof is in the research. In the physical, one study showed that people who scored highly on having a sense of purpose are twice as likely to remain free from Alzheimer's disease than those with a low score. People with purpose have faster walking speeds and better grip, strength as they age. They sleep better than those who don't. Purpose can even prolong your life. One study found that people without a strong sense of purpose were more than twice as likely to die during the course of the study than those who did, particularly from cardiovascular disease. The relationship was so strong that the researchers concluded that life purpose was more important to decreasing risk of death than quitting smoking or exercising regularly. The emotional impact. Research tells us that purpose is associated with higher life satisfaction, lower risk of depression, loneliness, and the list goes on. Purposeful people feel less sidelined by life stressors, and they're able to recover from setbacks more quickly. Professionally, it can even impact your professional well-being. Research shows that having a sense of purpose in your work increases productivity, and a sense of fulfillment with your work, which we know are also related to increased job satisfaction. So as you sit here today, you may be feeling good, like you have a handle on your sense of purpose, and you're benefiting from these positive outcomes already. But some may be feeling a little less sure. Whether you're on your own journey, we're going to cover some tips and ideas on how you might uncover your own sense of purpose in life. As we begin our discussion, it's important to realize that there is no set way or timeline to finding your purpose. Some discover purpose early on. A child who conquers cancer and grows up to be a doctor to help others in a way that they were helped. For others, it's a sudden realization. A person saved from a deadly house fire changes careers to fight fires. But such clear inspiration is not the norm. And I'm going to say that again because so many people get trapped into this. The clear inspiration is not the norm. For most people, the search for purpose can be a very long journey, and it can change. An accumulation of years of introspection, decisions, random events, adversity, risks, even mistakes. It is certainly not something you find by the end of a 1-hour seminar. But let's start. First, we'll look at ways to get to know yourself. What is most important to you? What gives you joy and satisfaction? Next, we're going to do a self-assessment to determine how well your actions are aligned with what is important to you. We're going to explore to define the ideal, examining what your life will look like when you're living by your stated purpose. And then we'll discuss how to set goals to help you make those actions part of your everyday reality. So we're going to start this journey by looking at ways you can get to know yourself and what you value on a personal level. The first step towards identifying what is purposeful for you is to get to know yourself and your values. On the surface, this seems like this seems like an easy task. The person who knows you best should be you, right? But with busy lives, careers, family, and just the day-to-day, it's common to lose focus on what is most important to you. So one way is to break your life down into separate components. And you have a handout called A Path to Purpose, and it's a worksheet with different questions. It breaks down your life into components like family, friends, your career. And this handout is a roadmap for you doing this with different aspects of your lives forming each category. I will ask you to think about which components are the most important to you in a moment. For some of us, it's not so easy to identify what's most important. To get past this, it helps to take the big picture view of your life. Try to see patterns in your behavior. Start with your basic day-to-day. What are the best parts of your day? Which parts do you dread? What do you wish you had more time for? Then zoom out a little and think about your life in general. What tends to take up the most of your time on a weekly basis? Think about your work, what you do for others. When do you go above and beyond? Now, zoom way out even more to look at the big picture, the larger causes you care about, and spiritual beliefs that inform your life. Notice what kinds of social media posts or news stories you're drawn to. If you tend to share posts related to pet adoption, for example, it might be a clue. Animal welfare is important to you. Another interesting approach to the question is to ask others for their perspective. Sometimes other people provide a more clear, objective window. Ask friends, family, or colleagues when you seem at your best. When do you seem happiest? What do they appreciate about you? Their perspective can give you valuable clues about what is important to you and things you are good at that you may not have even considered. So I want you to take a look at what is most important in your life. So I'm going to ask you some questions in case you don't have the handout in front of you. And I'm going to focus on personal development for a moment. Career and livelihood. How do you prioritize your physical, your mental, and your emotional wellness? Self-care. How do you prioritize your physical, mental, and emotional wellness? Enjoyment. How do you prioritize your physical, mental, and emotional wellness? And then the last category is learning new things. So that gives you an idea of the fact that we all need to take some time to get to know ourselves and what it is we value in order to have a better idea of what to focus on with our purpose. Another way to gain some clarity on what is meaningful is to look at your own passions and your interests, the tasks and activities that make you happiest, most engaged, like the time is flying by. Feeling this way is a state that psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, very hard word to say, he describes it as the flow. How do you know when you're in the flow? You're in the flow when you're so engaged in an activity that you feel relaxed. You're challenged, but not to the point of feeling stressed. You can lose your sense of time while you concentrate solely on the task at hand. What creates this state for you? For some, it's creative pursuits like writing or painting. For others, it's hand-on tasks like woodworking or building something. It might simply be a household task like cleaning or organizing, or work tasks like graphic designing or programming. It can be anything. So I'm just going to take a second here for you to just stop and think, what am I doing when I forget to stop, when I forget to eat, when I forget to take a break because I'm so into the flow? Having an idea of what puts you in flow is an important clue to identifying what types of tasks are most fulfilling and have the most meaning for you personally. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi emphasizes that once you've mastered a skill, it's important to keep increasing the challenge so you can stretch your skills over time. Think about the tasks and activities that create that state for you, and make a note of what they are in the middle column of the appropriate category on this worksheet. They might be enjoyment, they might be leisure. So if you think of anything and you want to share it in the chat, feel free. Now that you have an idea of values and passions that add meaning to your life, your next step is to self-assess. Self-assess begins with an exploration of how well your actions align with the priorities you've identified. One of the things I do with my clients is I have them do a pie chart, and I have them map out, do their values, and the amount of time and energy and focus they put on those values. Are they reflective in the pie chart? Most often, not so much. So to find a path to where we're going, we first have to identify our starting point by asking ourselves a few questions. What do you do well when it comes to living by your stated values? Where do you struggle? In other words, what behaviors do you engage in that do not align with those priorities? To dig even deeper, break them down into parts. Ask yourself, when and where am I at my best? Who am I with? What am I doing? And consider those same questions for when you struggle. What do these situations have in common? The answers to these provide important clues to how your lifestyle might be modified to allow more or perhaps less of these behaviors and situations. Let's illustrate how to do this with an example. Sherry considers her husband and her two teenagers to be one of the most important priorities in her life. She owns a small cafe where she employs only a couple of employees. So she often works 50 to 60 hours a week, including nights and Saturdays. But she loves her job. Life is usually busy for her, and it can be exhausting. Sherry wants to review her actions in relationship to her family, who she has deemed her highest priority. When Sherry struggles to prioritize her family, it's usually during the hustle and bustle of a Saturday at the cafe where she works. She sometimes misses her kids' school activities. Sherry usually stays late on Saturdays to clean up and prepare paperwork. When she gets home, both she and her husband are tired, and they sometimes get into arguments. So how can we break down Sherry's life into the who, what, where, when, and how? When Sherry is at her best, wait a minute. When Sherry is at her best, as it pertains to family, she devotes her full attention to her children and spouse. This is usually possible on Sundays when the cafe is closed. When the weather is nice, they'll go hiking in a nearby national park. During these hikes, she often learns something new about her children's lives and gets the chance to reconnect. This exercise is not meant to make Sherry feel bad about times when she struggles or to suggest that her work isn't important. It's simply to give her a starting point for identifying where she might make changes. Remember, at this stage, we're assessing where you are today. So if you look at your worksheet, your purpose worksheet, and review the categories, you can think about your own current behaviors and jot some notes down in the middle column. So it might even help you to do a pie chart. Next, we want to spend some time identifying the ideal, or what it would look like if you were living perfectly by the things that hold value to you. I'd like to do a brief visualization exercise. So I'd like everyone to get comfortable, relax, close your eyes. Think about an ideal world, one where you feel calm, focused, relaxed, fulfilled. It's a typical Tuesday. Where are you? Are you working? If so, what are you doing? Where are you? Now it's evening or it's off work hours. Where are you now? Who is there with you? How are you spending your time? Okay, you can come back, open your eyes. It's important to identify the actions that exemplify this ideal vision. Focusing on actions is important because it helps you conceptualize how to live by your values. So thinking back to Sherry from our last example, her ideal might be having more open Saturdays or less paperwork so she can spend time with her family freely, avoiding the arguments that leave her feeling tired after a long workday. Now look at the final column on your worksheet. For the categories that are most important to you, jot some ideas on what actions would represent your ideal self. Note that what is actually possible is not important. Sherry, from our example, may not be able to afford to hire additional staff members to work weekends right now, but just as you may not have the resources or the capability of achieving your ideal vision right now, that's okay. That's what makes it ideal. Consider what you've written so far. Is your ideal in the third column different from your reality in the second column? If so, ask yourself, what gets in the way of you living by this vision of the ideal? It's where we fall short that gives us the best opportunity to live by our purpose. It's these obstacles that help form the basis of your goals, which we're going to cover next. So as we know, when you become clear in your assessment of what's missing, that's how you formulate your goals. The key to any behavior change is not about time, money, or motivation. It's about goals. The very act of thinking about goals has an impact on your sense of purpose. Studies show that the more people think about their future, the more meaning they tend to feel their life has. When formulating goals, there's a few tips to keep in mind. Start small. Start with small goals that build up to larger ones. Choosing too lofty of a goal up front can take the wind out of your sails before you even get started. Break down your larger goals into parts. Sherry might be attend my daughter's debate tournaments every Saturday, but she might break that into small short-term goals. Ask if one of my employees will work next Saturday. She doesn't need to completely revamp her business strategy, but she can try to make schedule allowances in the short term. Over time, Sherry's next goal might be to hire a part-time bookkeeper to do her paperwork on Saturdays, so she can get home earlier. Be flexible. Be willing to adjust your goals to make them work. Recognize you may not always reach a goal in the timeline you prefer. Adjust your timeline to better fit your current needs or break the goal down even further. Don't let yourself be defeated by setbacks. There's no timeline or requirement for your personal goals. Focus on actions, not feelings. It's important to formulate goals around behaviors and actions, not the feelings associated with them. Goals centered around behaviors give you a concrete way to make progress, with positive feelings likely following that sense of achievement. It's okay to be self-focused. Your goals do not have to involve anyone else. This exercise is about helping you to live your life according to your values. For some, it might be devoting time to family, dinner once a week. For others, it might be finishing a long-term project at work. This is about finding and living by what is meaningful to you personally, whether or not that includes other people. So keep working on this worksheet. One avenue by which many people find their purpose is through the work they do. For some, there's a natural fit between their purpose and the career they've been drawn to. Someone who values beautiful art becomes a curator for your museum. For many, the work they do is simply a means for a paycheck, lacking personal meaning or fulfillment. Many people feel purposeful through activities they do in their personal lives, in the community, with loved ones, through their passions. That's okay. But research shows that when our job aligns with our skills, passions, and strengths, we feel more engaged and satisfied with our work lives. We improve our performance, and we even increase our resilience in the face of challenges. We can do this through what psychologist Amy Rozwadowski calls job crafting. Job crafting is not about finding a new job to feel purposeful. It's an exercise in finding meaning and purpose in the job you're already doing. There are three main avenues by which you craft your job to better suit you: through the tasks that you do, the relationships you have at work, and your perception of the work you do and how you contribute. We'll review each of these on the coming slides. The first component of job crafting, emphasizing task crafting. Adjusting the way tasks are performed or taking on fewer or more tasks according to our skills. In other words, task crafting is doing more of what you like and finding valuable and less of what you don't. So let's use another example to illustrate how this might look. Sean is a customer service rep at a call center from an online sportswear retailer. Most of his day is spent on the click-to-chat platform, dealing with complaints and returns. Sometimes he gets to suggest products and make sales to customers with questions. What tasks does Sean like doing at work and dislike? Sean enjoys talking to customers and talking about the products. He likes brainstorming ideas on how to solve customers' problems. He dislikes processing returns. What does he like or dislike about those tasks? He's a people person. He feels proud when he sells a customer on a particular product. He finds tasks that are more procedural in nature, like returns, to be boring. He loses focus very easily. So how can he do more or less of that? Sean knows that the members of his team who work the phones are often able to sell more products. He talks to his supervisor, who agrees to schedule some training and part-time shifts, staffing the phones. Sean now gets to interact with customers and utilize his scale skill. He processes fewer returns, cutting down a bit of the procedural work. This example illustrates how Sean does not need to look for a new job to capitalize on his strength. He was able to craft a more personally meaningful set of tasks using the resources already available to him. Keep in mind, though, it will not always be possible to change every task you find unpleasant. Work with your manager to see if you can redistribute work tasks in a way that plays to your strength. You can use the questions on the worksheet to figure that out. The next component of job crafting is relationship crafting, forming or reframing social connections at work. Relationship crafting can help you expand your skills and your strengths into new territories. Look for assignments that involve other teams or work groups. Use your resources. Ask your manager if they're aware of any projects you might be a part of. Keep updated on what your organization is doing, not just your team, and be proactive if something catches your interest. Look for join committees, work groups, projects on topics of interest to get connected with others. Find ways to make projects team oriented. Teamwork can be challenging, but can push you to expand your ideas past the status quo. If you have ideas for how a task or a project could be improved with the expertise of a colleague, speak to your manager about including them. Emphasize how these relationships benefit your work, customers, or the organization. Consider a mentoring relationship. You might benefit from having a mentor to help expand your skills and network, giving you new skills or experience in other areas. Or perhaps you might consider being a mentor to a younger or a new employee, finding purpose in sharing your experience with another. The last component of job crafting is reframing your perspective, putting your role into a larger context. To illustrate this concept, I want to review the classic study of feeling purposeful at work. To investigate the differences between those who found meaning in their work and those who did not, Resniewski interviewed the janitorial staff at several hospitals. Based on these interviews, she found two groups of janitors. The first group complained about their jobs, listing the things they disliked and noting they were only there for the benefits. The second group, those who were happiest in their jobs, didn't see themselves as simply custodial workers or cleaners. Rather, they saw themselves as integral to the health and safety of the hospital's patients. These employees learned about the patients whose rooms they cleaned and mindfully chose cleaning products that would irritate them less. They noted which patients had fewer visitors, making a point to visit them. They saw themselves as healers, not janitors. In other words, they created purpose out of the work they were officially assigned. They saw their role and purpose at work very differently than the first group, even though they did the exact same job. You can do this too. Consider the questions on this slide and on your worksheet. What is the larger purpose of your organization? What is your role in that purpose? And what values do you specifically hold to the customer, your colleagues, your supervisor, your organization? Think about your work as a contribution to a larger goal or mission. Look for ways, large and small, that you can incorporate that mission into your work even more. Having a purposeful, meaningful life doesn't mean you have to be famous or make history or do incredible things. It can be found in small, seemingly insignificant moments during the course of your day. Having a pleasant conversation with a friend, packing a lunch for your children, learning a new song, helping others. While the strategies outlined here today are great ways to align your actions more closely with your values, it's also important to recognize you can find purpose in the routines and actions you perform every day. It's important to recognize that, in the words of the University of Missouri professor and researcher Laura King, people don't need to know how to make their lives meaningful. They need to know that they already are. And you have another handout that is really wonderful about finding meaning in everyday moments. And I think this is just so important to everyone, regardless of where you are in your purpose-filled life journey. But cherishing routines, putting your everyday into the context of a bigger why, establishing rituals for your everyday actions, rituals that have meaning to you. I get up every morning, have my cup of coffee, and read something very inspirational before I start my day. What do you do? Find ways to help others. Get out in nature. Savor when you are joyful. Practice gratitude. look through old photos, tap into your spirituality, feeling connected to something larger than you. And that's very different from religion. Spirituality can mean many different things. It can encompass religion, but it can also be personal relationships, nature, or others. Whatever provides you with a sense of connection. So I want to close today by reminding you that purpose can be a lifelong journey. It is a lifelong journey. It's rarely something that clicks in your head like a light bulb. I want you to try to think of purpose as more of a fluid state rather than a concrete goal to be achieved. So it's always a work in progress, a verb, not a noun. It's not finding your purpose so much as living by your purpose, an active process requiring conscious thought and intention that aligns with your own goals and ideals day by day. So if you continue throughout your life to just take time when needed to just remind yourself of your values, what it is and who it is that you value, and just doing a pie chart or asking yourself the question, looking at these worksheets and saying, is my energy reflective of my value? It's more important than simply one action or kind gesture. It can't be dismantled by one mistake. Remember this as you proceed on this journey. You may not rise to the challenge in the way you want to every day or every moment, but there's always another one. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Hey everyone, if you'd like to place those questions in the chat, or if you would like to unmute yourself and ask the question, you're welcome to. Just in the meantime, I did place our EAP number in the chat. So if you'd like to take note of that, you can also find that information at mysigna.com as well.
Okay.
And we do have a question here.
What app do I use for motivational quotes? Oh, one. I I am actually on several inspirational Facebook pages. I can look them up really quickly while you're asking other questions, but I get them every day. And I will tell you in a moment what they are. So go ahead and ask me another question while I look.
Any suggestions for reading on this topic? That's a great question.
I would say just do a search on the purpose-filled life, but the book that comes to mind immediately is a religious book, but you may want to look around and find one that isn't. There are a lot of coaching related books that talk about purpose-driven life. One thing I do I also do life coaching is ask people to remember, what were you doing when you were 10 years old and you didn't have a structured event? What would you do to occupy your time? A lot of time your purpose is right in there. That's where your passion lies. In terms of books, I'm not sure, but I will look and see what I have. Other questions?
And then also, meanwhile, we're waiting for questions or Dr. Eastman to find that information. The handout that Dr. Eastman was talking about, it can be found in the email sent out by Kelsey Williams this morning. It is attached to that email, so please feel free to print it out. I printed mine out, and I'm probably going to work on it later. But print that out, use it, share it with your family members, anyone you feel would benefit from it. Do that. EAP phone number is listed on there as well. And then we do have another question here. Let's see.
Okay. Okay. Resources for Myers-Briggs indication. Okay. I think if you just look up Myers-Briggs, you can find where that is. I'm not so sure that I actually would recommend, instead of the Myers-Briggs, is Okay, I knew I'd forget what it is. Oh, the Enneagram. Enneagram. EANNAGRAM. Let me write it down. That is actually a better indicator of what we're talking about today. And I will write it down here. It's much more in depth about your personality type, and it gives you a lot better understanding of how you interact with other people. So I highly recommend this one. And there you can do some pretty interesting reading about purpose. Other questions?
Any other questions?
Let me look up purpose.
Yes. 1 second. I think it's coming. 1 second.
No books come up. Oh, The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer. That's a good one. I think if you just do a search, you'll find it. Where do you find purpose after losing someone to death? Very good question. I do a fair amount of end of life work, and one of the things that I learned, because primarily when I first started out, I was working with children who died, is I learned that how long we live is sometimes not as important as how we lived. And if there's something about that person, a lesson they taught you, a gift they gave you, some aspect of their life and how they lived it that you are embraced by, inspired by, then there can be a higher purpose. For example, the kids I worked with, oftentimes their parents would do what I call transforming pain to purpose. They would become an advocate for people living with and dying from the same disease their child had. If there's something about the person you lost that inspires you, chances are pretty good that you can take that information and inspire someone else. And it's figuring out how. But that's a great question. Other questions?
If there's no other questions, thank you everyone so much for being here today, Dr. Eastman, for your time. We are going to have Dr. Eastman present on another topic. I believe it's in November on beating burnout. So please join us for that as well. You will receive an email announcement from Kelsey Williams for that Still Healthy seminar. But with that being said, thank you everyone for being here. You can find this recording on our YouTube channel. Just visit our website through the ATSU portal, search HR Home, Still Healthy, and you'll find all of the recordings there. Dr. Eastman, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
You are
And
most welcome. And I really encourage you all to keep those handouts and keep doing those pie charts and reminding yourself if you're in alignment.
awesome. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.